Welcome to the Freedom to Flourish Summit. I'm Jasia Cornwise, and I'm here with Mahwesh Syed. She is a design goddess. She's a best-selling author, and she is the founder of Claim Your Paradise. I have to say, I had the pleasure of meeting Mahwesh along our journey of being businesswomen and being speakers and bright, shining beings out in the past few years. And she is one of the people that I've just stayed in deep touch with. She is genuine. She is someone who's ready to be authentic with you and share what it really takes. And we often see people, they look amazing on the outside, they're doing all these great things, and we're like, how do they get there? How do they do that? And it's not necessarily because it's been easy. And I love to encourage anyone in this audience, if you've got a dream or you have something in your soul, but you're feeling stuck and you're fighting, I've got tools. All these people have different tools who you're going to see. And Mahwesh is very special. And I'm so excited for you to meet her today. So Mahwesh, can you tell us, let's start by just tell me a little bit about I'm going to ask you your life story, your childhood, the defining moments of your beginnings, the challenges you grew up with, if you're okay to do that.
Thank you, Jasia, and so lovely. And thank you so much for the lovely introduction. I am multilingual, and you know what? Let me just turn off this do not disturb. I forgot to do that.
There you
All
go.
right, we can edit that out. So I am multidisciplinary and always have been, and I'm multilingual. I was not born in this country. I was born in Pakistan in a very ancient city called Lahore. And for me, my family lineage is really important in the folk tales and just the folklore of where we come from and my roots. Having had that and moving to this country at the tender age of 7, really brought me my first challenge, which was, a new culture and a new way of being. And I grew up in 4 generational household. So great grandmother, grandmother, parents, aunties, uncles, and me. And I was the first grandchild on one side and the second on the other. So it was like a community affair. When they say it takes a village to raise a child, I was raised by the village,
Yes.
really, truly. And so going from that to isolation and being basically the only family from that part of the world in the beginning.
Where did you move to immediately? Where was your first home?
First place was Buffalo, and then that was second grade. It's my first experience with snowfall, lots of snow. And, basically, I already spoke English because I learned English along with Urdu and Arabic. So it was already a part of, but it was a very British English that I learned. And then having to learn American English was interesting. But I love being, I call myself a bridge. And I think, Jasia, what you do and what the people that you are interested in are also bridge. They're bridge builders and bridge makers. And I think when we bridge different disciplines or light and shadow, pain and joy, we're really traversing this idea of the breadth of humanity. And as you said, the social media may show this bright and shiny image. And believe me, I'm an image maker. I'm a fashion designer, an interior designer. I
And
package
wow.
that glamour. I know how to package that glamour very well. I do it effortlessly over time. But what I want to say, and this is so important, this is why I wrote my book, Purgatory to Paradise, which is even then, I was living in a state of purgatory, of living in a state of default, of waiting to live in the waiting room of life and waiting to be given the permission slip to be my authentic self, right? Instead of waiting for other people to give me that permission and realizing that my value was not extrinsic, that it was intrinsic, that it was from within, and to give myself that permission to live an authentic life, which is the subtitle of my book. So it is such an important thing to recognize that we are the ones who hold ourselves back, we are our own gatekeepers. And oftentimes we don't even realize we're doing it. We don't realize that. And we're waiting around for the world to recognize the greatness within us, the magnificence within us, to validate that instead of validating that for ourselves and saying, damn right, I'm awesome.
100%. I 100% agree with every single thing you said. And for the audience here, tell me a little bit about like how that showed up. So childhood, you were in this new culture, you had to learn a language, you just shifted from a multi 4 generation household to a smaller situation. How did, like, what struggles did you go through those early years? And how did it impact you? Like the real raw stuff.
Oh my gosh, I had people come up to me in the playground and tell me they'll pray for my everlasting soul because I didn't believe in Jesus. Um, which is interesting because I learned about Christianity, and growing up in Islam, you learn about Judaism and Christianity within the Quran. So for me, it was like a no-brainer. Of course, I believe in Jesus, but it was semantics. Like, is he your God? I'm like, no, there is, the way we believe it. So it was having to explain as a little kid to other little kids who are only kind of repeating what they're being told. And so it's so interesting being felt like the other. Like I suddenly was the other, and I was never the other. I was always within the bosom of my family and very much accepted and loved and celebrated, going from being celebrated to being judged, like basically having to earn people's understanding, which is not based on me, it's based on their capacity. So that is something I learned really quickly, was to only share the things or become like the teacher that I am, to start sharing culture. Because like from a really young age, I would do these presentations on Southeast Asia for class, and I would be like 8 years old, like bringing over clothing and describing the scarf and where, it's made out of silk and it's hand dyed and things like that, which is funny because I do that now. That's what I do.
So there you go. So it was in there the whole time. So so how did that like journey from the struggle? When was the turning point when you realized I no longer am going to struggle, I'm going to be myself? What were those moments that happened? And what was there a crisis before that moment?
Actually, Jassia, I don't believe in one turning point.
Absolutely.
I don't think in one turn. I don't think so at all. I think there are many different types of turning points in
Agree.
one's life.
Yeah.
And so in terms of ownership and like basically I was lucky enough to go to a Montessori school, which is wonderful because I got to, and this is where my love of Greek mythology came about, because I got to spend 4 months learning about mythology, Greek mythology, and I would sketch every goddess. So I copied my dad. He had an office and he had frames of our pictures, picture frames of us on his desk. So I got a picture frame, and every week I would design Aphrodite or Athena or Persephone in one of my designs. I would draw it all out, put her in the frame, and she would be sitting there staring back at me, and I would be communing with her. And I was given that freedom to decorate my desk the way, I mean, I was already decorating since I was little. So I I think all those seeds, sometimes we don't realize that whatever it is, and I do inner child work with my clients too, all the things that we used to be so passionate about, that's there for a reason. That's not just because you're a kid and, oh, I was just a kid and, fashion plates. I made, clothes for my Barbie dolls, like whatever it is, whatever projects that I did, I would take apart my grandma's old clothes and patchwork them onto like Western clothes. I literally was creating a fashion bridge between the East and the West when I was 12 years old.
100% believe that. I believe that everyone's got a soul purpose and it comes out in ways. I mean, I wrote 2 books when I go back and they were like in second grade, and the titles are like the stories of my life. One was called Nobody's Perfect, and it was all about embracing imperfection. But this is like a second grade book. And the other was called the magic mushroom, which was like this whole, I didn't even know what that meant, right? This whole thing into consciousness and spirituality. And look at where my journey took you. I had no idea what I was writing at those ages. But it's
Right.
almost like we have a seed that we come to embody. And yours so gorgeously showed up. So tell us more. What was the next turning point?
I ended up studying, I was pre-med in college, which was ironic. Because again, I was under the kind of familial pressure of there's only like certain jobs that are acceptable. And I remember I felt like I was coming out of the closet when I said I really want to do fashion as a career, because it's like, wait, what? That's crazy. So I think each one of these things are about me giving myself permission first, and then, not waiting around for other people to give me permission, right?
Well,
And
it's
I recognize that.
culture. And I think a lot of people experience that where they're fighting lineages of beliefs about what is acceptable. And you said,
Yeah.
permission granted to myself, permission granted.
Yeah, and it's taken me a lifetime to deprogram that particular level of obedience, because I write about this in my book, being the cult of the good woman, or I call it, the Wonder Woman syndrome, which is, I love Wonder Woman. I had Wonder Woman underoos as a kid. And I'm like, I love Wonder Woman. I'm like, now I don't want to be Wonder Woman. Please don't call me a superhero, because I think we do ourselves a disservice as women by trying to frame ourselves as superhuman, and we're not. And I think being authentic is to be human, to be imperfect, like you wrote in your book in second grade, and to actually accept the parts of us, the shadow side. And that is a big part of my brand. It's a big part of my life philosophy, Jasya, because the shadow, which I call the underworld, that Persephone is going through, everyone thinks the underworld, the Disneyfied version of the underworld, is its hell, which is actually not the case. Underworld has the Elysian fields, like the beautiful, where it's both heaven and hell. But the idea of the underworld for me is the darkness, the parts of us that we either hide from ourselves or hide from others, the parts of ourselves we have rejected, the parts of ourselves that we can't comprehend.
I love how you
Right.
about this. And, I am so in resonance. I trained as a shadow coach. And it's funny because I've never heard anyone talk about the Elysian fields also as an underworld, because I would agree with that. I've experienced very deep underworld journeys as you have. And in that is all of the worlds that aren't conscious, right? It's all the worlds that we don't have access to until we go in and find our wholeness from them. So I just completely resonate. Now, some people listening might not have any idea what we're talking about, but can you tell them a bit about how your underworld journey may then have saved you and where you
Thank
went?
you. Thank you. So I likened, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2019, and I liken my cancer as Hades. Now, the story of Persephone is it was something that I was very attached to my whole life. Little did I know that I would become her in more ways than one. When Persephone is kidnapped and taken into her underworld. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I read Homer's Ode to Demeter. I actually designed a collection and had a fashion show in Chicago that last weekend, which had me Homer's Ode to Demeter on the clothing. So about like talk about layers, right? And so this idea of Persephone, when she's in the meadow, the moment that she reaches for this one particular flower, which is the narcissus, otherwise known as the daffodil, which is where we get the word narcissist from. So I was in a toxic relationship. So I reached for him, I reached for that flower, and that's when Hades came and kidnapped me and took me into my underworld. And Hades being,
I bet there are a lot of women going, I had that moment. I know which one. It's a part of an awakening journey.
yeah. So when I, was faced with that shadow realm of all these parts I had ignored in the relationship, all these things that didn't add up. And then realizing that it had taken a physical toll. Now, most people may not know this, but 90% of cancer is epigenetic. which means that it is not genetic, that it is related to your lifestyle or your environment. So your lifestyle and environment includes the relationships you have, your emotional state. So I was in a constant fight, flight, fawn, freeze, sympathetic, activated nervous system state in that relationship. And so I never got to go into my parasympathetic state. And for everyone who's listening, your parasympathetic state, your rest and relaxation state, is where you replenish yourself, where your cells can rejuvenate. And if you don't allow, and stress is one of the biggest causes of being out of whack with that as well. That's why we have so many stress related diseases. So if you look at your relationships, you audit, and this is why I created a course, Claim Your Paradise, for people who are going through cancer or people who are service providers to cancer patients. All of those things are important, including your home. Now, I'm an interior designer. I started looking at my environment through the lens of epigenetics while I was going through cancer. And I realized, even as a materials consultant for other firms, yes, I look at what's the latest, greatest when it comes to beauty, but what about health? What about health? So suddenly I was looking at things like, oh, what paints am I using? What lights am I using? What am I eating off of? What are the containers? All of these things, my bed sheets, everything. So I really started looking at it through that lens. And I discovered, by the way, Persephone, she's the only Olympian god who can commute between the upper world and the underworld, right? So that's what we do. We commute between our shadow and our light. It's not about being happy, happy, happy. Everything's great. Social media, like smiley, smiley faces. It's about authenticity and being able to go back into yourself, being an introvert, then coming out and being that extrovert, but knowing your own balance, figuring yourself and your own rhythms out. Speaking of which, whether it's circadian rhythm, whether it's your womanly rhythm, all of those rhythms, that is the natural way of life. And it's an ancient way of life, Jasya. And that is something that is such a big passion and a life's mission of mine.
Yeah. So I mean, you just have such an exquisite depth and so many layers to how your soul continued to use all of the gifts you were given and then to work for so many meaningful causes on top of, I mean, beauty is meaningful, health is meaningful, cancer is meaningful, right? Empowerment is meaningful, diversity is meaningful. So, you kept bridging all of these crossings. Tell us a little about your healing. So you had cancer. Tell us about how you healed and what you needed to do with your mind and your body and your spirit to make different choices.
Thank you for that question. I did not look like this when I went through cancer. I had barely any eyebrows. I went through really severe allopathic treatment, chemo, radiation, surgery, all of it. And during that process is where I discovered that I call them my rituals of reverence. And I'll give you an example of this. So when I couldn't eat my mom's favorite, my favorite Pakistani dishes that my mom was cooking, she would fly in and cook me stuff. And I couldn't stand the smell of it. It was like morning sickness. Like everything tasted weird. And I took down my best dishes, my cloth napkins. I lit candles. I spread rose petals on the table. I garnished my simple sliced banana with violas from my garden. And I created these rituals of reverence of being able to appreciate what I could eat, what I could imbibe, and to be incredibly intentional, Jasya, with this blessing that I had in front of me, that I was still here, that I was still alive, that I was still going to figure out a way through this. And I'm not sugarcoating the despair and the heartbreak and the pain and the bone pain and all the nausea, all of that.
Can you tell
Those were
me
real.
how long ago this was? Like how long since you were
This
diagnosed?
it's been 4.5 years. So fairly recent. I mean, I went through care, like my treatment was very intense and it took a long, better part of a year. And frankly, they don't tell you this, but it takes years to recover from the depletion because your body's depleted of minerals. So you have to replenish your microbiome. You have to replenish your minerals. People suffer from osteopenia. There's all sorts of things that you have to do. So how did I do that? Number one, I created these rituals of reverence, which I teach about. And now I lead workshops at hospitals where I show how to deal with the cancer journey and how to help yourself at home to help complement the allopathic care, because all these other modalities I find are so beneficial, including beauty. And what I want to state for your audience is when I talk about beauty, I don't mean surface. I'm not talking cosmetics. I'm talking about divine cellular alignment, aka Bruce Lipton, and this idea that our body's always seeking homeostasis, our body's always seeking to heal itself. And so, how can I get out of my own way? How can I bring myself into my parasympathetic state through design? What does that even look like? So I have real world examples, accessible examples that you don't need $1 million for, because who's got that kind of money when you're dealing with cancer? And so that's where Claim Your Paradise really took root, because when I was doing these workshops, people were coming up to me like, you designed for the 1%ers. How can I afford you? What can I do? And I'm like, oh, have I got something for you? This is what you do, because this is what I did. And so I started really using practical protocols. And again, complementary. It's not either or, it's not binary where it's like homeopathic versus allopathic versus naturopathic. Like they're not in any competition to me. They're all very complementary.
I actually really agree with that. I think that's part of the bridge walking that we both do, that when we can see the beauty in all worlds, we're coming into balance.
Yes, yes. And it's never that simple in that way, yet the simple act of pivoting into that level of self-acceptance is really important. And I'll give you a wonderful analogy. I don't know if you know about the Japanese term kintsugi.
Do, and I love it. Talk to our audience about it. It's so
So
good.
I'm a visual person. And so I love ceramics, I love pottery, and it's, over 500 years old tradition where, they have a wonderful tradition of ceramics. But instead of taking, if something breaks, instead of throwing it away like we do in this culture, and I come from the same kind of culture of fixing it, right? So what they do is they join the broken pieces together, but instead of making those joints invisible, they actually draw your attention to those cracks by gilding those cracks in gold or silver.
I love that.
And the reason why is to draw your mind visually to the fact that you are not broken and that something like this can be beautiful and rendered even more beautiful. So you, with your scars, with your wrinkles, with your jiggles, with your rolls, with all of these things that we women try to like whitewash and like filter out and buff out, I think, or Botox out, whatever you want to call it, that level of, to me, kintsugi represents self-acceptance of that wrinkle, of that scar. And instead of saying, hey, I want to hide this, no, this is my beauty. This is my gold. This is my treasure.
First of all, you're such an, one of the reasons I asked you to be here too is I'm obsessed with the way you speak about things because I resonate. You're such a great storyteller. And one of the things that just happened is you shared about kintsugi there, through your lens, like you were talking about how the art form looks. And I just had this whole soul kintsugi because I see the golden people in their broken places. And I feel like the more broken and healed we are, the more we light up. And I love the people that have that inner shine. It's almost as if our souls are doing a kintsugi, and as we heal, we become more glistening. And whether you know it or not, you're attracted to the vibration of that golden kintsugi on a human being too, at a soul level.
Oh my God, we were meant to do this. Yes. Yes. I'm getting chills as you're talking. I'm like, yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Soul kintsugi, damn. Um, totally, totally. And it's funny that you recognize that because I think we are living in a culture that villainizes pain. If you think about it, there's a pain pill for everything. We're supposed to numb that pain out, whereas that pain is, I wrote this in my book, it's like a signal that, if you're driving your car and the car's running on empty, do you put a post-it note over the gas gauge so just so you don't want to see it? Eventually, you're going to crash your car. You're going to run out of gas. And then what? And so this idea of being able to face the hard stuff and to be able to say, hey, you know what? This really hurts. This person really hurt me. And I can't pretend that this is love. This isn't love. And I won't be loving myself if I continue lying to myself about it. Right. And so having to feel the pain of that heartbreak was one of the biggest challenges of me, because I wasn't scared of dying, Jasia. I was scared of my dream of love dying, because that was
Attachment. I did that too. The attachment, you hang on to the dream at the cost of realizing you're not chasing the dream, you're chasing the truth in you. And if it's not resonating there, you're jumping
right.
out something that is not true.
Right. Self-trust comes into it. Self-trust, and that's what I call your inner GPS.
Wow.
So
I have
really,
in my book with the inner GPS, it is gold, right?
yeah. So this is so again, we speak the same language. I feel like we are, as a culture, are being taught to outsource our GPS, right? Look at Siri, trust Siri. I mean, oh my gosh, there's that, great Office episode where Siri's telling them to go into the lake and they're driving the car into the lake. I think Michael drives in the lake. And I'm like, that's it. Like, people trust this robot. And I'm like, what about you? What about your own sense of direction of north, south, east, and west? Figure it out. Figure out your own way. We outsource that so much. And I think there's a danger in that.
Totally. I mean, right now you are an expert in it. I mean, you're brilliant in it, but what were the steps you had to take for anyone listening? And I'm going to ask specifically, I know this is one of your passions too, and it's one of the ways we cross paths. Since I love, I came from a therapist background and a coaching background, a shadow work background, but also a dance therapy background, a breath work, and an intuitive background, and then the mindset training. So I recently, my big passion is I've composed this course that integrates all of it, which I call Rise Up and Dance, which is not about dancing. It's about rising up and finding the dance of the truth inside you and moving with it. So, I'm passionate about movement and dance, and I know you are. So how did movement, dance, breath work come in, if at all, during this time as well for you? Yoga, what were the things tools?
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. So I love dance. I I actually dance when I'm feeling really hurt or angry.
Yeah.
Um, that's like I get my best dancing out, and I'm like crying and dancing at the same time. So dancing is great. Movement is fabulous. Even when I couldn't really walk. I would have had such severe bone pain. I would try to walk just a little bit and come back. So just the simple act of walking outside, being in the sun. Now, I have my certification in applied quantum biology, and I think the one thing anyone can do is to get as much sun on your skin as possible, because we are literally light beings and we emit light, and we need the light to charge ourselves and to charge our cells. So to be outside, and I did this naturally. So when I was recovering from treatment, I would lie in the sun. I would take my gravity chair and I would just lie with my roses. And I did that naturally before I even got my certification. It was something I was really drawn to do. So that just being outside in any capacity. And I also believe in grounding. So bare feet on the ground, whether you're in prayer or meditation or yoga pose, to be able to be outside in the water, on the sand, in the grass, to be connected to Mother Earth, the Schumann resonance. It's really important to entrain your body back to that homeostasis. So those were things that I did just completely naturally.
It's so beautiful. I love meeting people who use the exact same tools. I just did a magazine piece in for Authority magazine talking about my 5 top self-care. And grounding in nature was absolutely one of them, like a lot of the things, because these things work. It's not just woo-woo. People are like, oh, this is so woo-woo. No, it's actually, as you said, it's grounded in science. And we're starting to see that coming together these days. I think more and more people are seeing that interface, but we need to keep talking about it because it is, the inner and the outer are absolutely connected. And until you understand that, you can't live a full, soulful life. So at this point, tell us what you are most excited about. What are you doing now that you are stoked about? I mean, you've been
Oh my God. Well, I just came back from the high of doing this fashion show in Chicago with a charity organization called Twist Out Cancer, where I dressed survivors, cancer survivors, in my designs. I did all these fittings virtually, by the way, and thank God everything worked out. But like the fact that I am a big proponent of beauty as a healing modality and helping you feel beautiful, whether through your interiors or through the clothes that you wear, to watch that in action, to have these faces light up with joy and to feel, so in their element, to have their soul shine through that. I'm still high off of that, Jasia. I'm so high off of that.
I
So
am.
I'm so
Will you have pictures? I'm sure there's going to be a big article about this. I'm dying to see that because that would be so moving. I love everything you're doing for the world. It's just, I'm so deeply honored that we connected and I feel such resonance. So it's just great to have you here. And all the people who are listening, how can people who either know people with cancer or might be struggling themselves or just in general want this kind of nourishment? What's the best avenue for them to reach you?
Yeah, thanks. Claimyourparadise.com. You can also book a free call with me to discuss however which way I can help you, whether it's through auditing your space. And you don't have to have cancer in order to talk with me. I want you to realize that you can also be a healthcare provider who is interested in creating a really beautiful, wonderful treatment space. I advise a lot of doctors as well on that. So it's basically, and I do like multi-million dollar renovations. What I wanted to create with Claim Your Paradise were protocols that you can employ today without waiting in purgatory of like that construction site and waiting for, that completion of your paradise, to have your paradise today, because that is really a big motivation from having had cancer, that, tomorrow may never come. What can I do today to help you create that beauty now? That's what Claim Your Paradise is all about.
My gosh, you're making me. I had tears well up just listening to all the incredible ways you have sown the gifts of your soul and the gifts of your pain into a life that gives back. And that is to me, the ultimate Kintu, that just the gold that shines through in every way. And you're also a mom like I am. How old's your boy now?
He's 14. I can't believe I'm a mom of a teenager. We'll
Yeah.
have to talk separately about that. Yeah.
Off to you. I know it's a big journey being a mama.
I love it. I love it.
Um, so my last question, and I think you've probably already answered it, but I'm just going to ask if you were going to go back in time, because it's really interesting. Everyone I ask, in some ways, all of us who I'm inviting in are, in my mind, some level of an evolved hero or heroine in their own story, and that's why they're here, is to inspire others about the journey. If you could go back and tell your little girl something, what would you whisper in her ear?
I would tell her, you're doing it right. You're doing it right. Keep doing it. Keep dreaming. Keep drawing. Keep playing. Keep sewing. All of these things will be your gold, and they still are.
I just love that. And I'm getting a real understanding because each time I ask that question, most of the people are like, saying, trust yourself. You did it right. You did good. Keep going. Keep, like that really. And I say this because a lot of us adults out there watching who are stuck, right? If you're feeling stuck right now and you're like, gosh, I know there's more for me. You might be living a life that looks pretty good, but you still have this feeling like something's just aching. I know there's more for me. Talk to me. Talk to her.
Mm.
We've got ideas, we've got plans, we've got gifts for you, and we know the feeling and we've shifted out and we've moved forward. And I know you can too. So, Mahwesh, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today. And Can't wait to see what's next for you and for everybody to share these great encouraging stories with one another.
Thank you. I'm giving you a hug through the screen, Jess, and hopefully soon in person. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome.